Check. We will start in 5 minutes.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Well, welcome everybody to this Autonomous Vehicles in the EU special event hosted by Pier Francesco Moran. We're really delighted to be here with you today. My name is Timothy Grabowdy. I'm the Managing Director of Commotion, a global events and media platform dedicated to mobility with events in North America, Europe, and now in the Middle East. Really delighted to welcome you all here today, and I will be emceeing this event. This is the second part of a series of 3 events. We had a first one online on the 18th of June with presentations of different AV case scenarios tested currently in the EU. Today, this event in person, but also on YouTube. So many of you here on YouTube, hello to the YouTube audience. You can sign in through YouTube and this will be filmed and be able to see it afterwards as well. And then we will have a third event in Italiano a Milano to talk about AVs in Milan on the 14th of July. So there we are. Today we're going to be exploring what is done in the EU. We'll also have an overview at the beginning about what is happening globally. And then we will discuss what needs to be done to accelerate autonomous vehicles in the European Union. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce the person who made this possible, hosting this event, Pier Francesco Maran, the MEP for the Northwest of Italy.
Thank you, Tim, and welcome everybody here and on YouTube also. It's so interesting to see many of you here because probably we need to talk more about autonomous vehicle in this building, and not only talk possibly, but also act to support. If we see all around the world, there are thousands of autonomous vehicles driving right now, but most of them are out of Europe at the moment. It's the moment Asia and United States push more. But if we see some study like the one by World Economic Forum, they say that even in future, if we don't change things, the technology will be much used in Asian cities, in American cities, instead of Europe. In short, Europe is lagging behind. And the reason of this gap are many. I will start from capital funds, private funds, where they had many investments abroad compared to the private investment in Europe, pardon. But this is a part of the problem. The other are connected with the rules. And also the fact that we had a fragmentation of public investment to support innovation and those technology. We have to work to change. I'm optimistic for the future. Why? First, because I'm always optimistic. Otherwise, I would resign to try to represent hope and the future. But then I'm optimistic because if we change our approach and we try to do something different, even by some lesson learned in the last years, I think we can find a European way for autonomous vehicle. So, why we should promote autonomous vehicle in Europe? I think we could work on a different approach compared to the one of the United States. Of course, robotaxi are important in the future. It's even as a business, probably the best one. But we need to do different things. We have a welfare state. We are used to have a public transport in our cities. And autonomous driving can also help to upgrade the way we have public transport. We have a different of behavior of citizens on how they work, they live, and they also think when they are inside the urban areas and outside the urban areas. And we could say that public transport is one of the main difference as public services. Autonomous vehicle can help to reduce this distance, to extend services. For us, mobility is also a right. When we talk about car, we don't have to talk only about how do they pollute. We have also to remember why we have car, because it's also a symbol of freedom for many citizens. But many citizens can't have this freedom because they can't drive, because they are too old, because they are disabled, because they are too young, or simply they don't want to. And autonomous vehicle and autonomous driving can help to extend the right to mobility to all those subjects. So it's also a matter of democracy. We have to change the way we transport things also. And autonomous vehicles can help to have a much sustainable sector also in transporting things. So there are many aspects, and even today we will see all those aspects where we can see that autonomous vehicle can help to reach our goals in many aspects, from environmental to the extent of right of mobilities of citizens. But to go in that direction, it's time to have some choose. And the first choose we have is if it's still time to develop EU technology or we should rely on third countries. I'm European, I represent European citizens and European companies here. So I think we are still on time to have European technology. And I think we should go on investing in that, but we need, as I was saying before, to change our approach. We need to attract private capitals. Public capitals not only are not sufficient, but if a technology like that is financed only by public capitals, probably we are making something wrong. So we need to find a good agreement and cooperation among public and private capitals. And we need to concentrate our efforts. I start saying that probably the moment of prototypal studies is over. We have a very interesting project, but now or we scale up or it's too late. So one of the main points is that we have to concentrate public resources from European Union, from the single states, in order to have few good projects that are not hopefully national, but involving many countries in Europe, but few and successful. If USA is investing in 2-3 projects, China the same, we can't have 20, 30, 40 projects of 5 cars when they are big. Second choose, changing private mobility or rethinking mobility entirely. That is also connected to Green Deal. I think if all our mobility go electric, but we have the same number of cars on our roads, we lose our challenge. Our goal is to change the way Europeans move, hopefully better than before. And autonomous driver, as we were saying, could help. So we need also to focus on all those kind of systems that are hybrid from public to private transport. Probably somebody will go on buying his car. Some other, they will not need to do that. So it's also a cornerstone on the way we imagine mobility for the future. And it's also connected on the rules we have, because the third choose we have to do if it's a public transport revolution or an add-on to private mobility. This is an important question also to see what project we approve on the testing level, because our approach has been made on the idea that we have add on a new function on traditional cars every time. But or we start from the idea that we have to advance step by step, but till the last step there is a driver that is responsible of everything inside the car, or we have another way where we know from the beginning, even not making all the stairs, that there is no driver on the car. It's a different economical approach for co-produced cars or vehicles, and it's a different approach also for who approve the rule. I would say that probably we need 2 different ways to approach, even because it's 2 different projects of mobility. The second is much public-oriented, public, or it could be services produced by private companies, but on the idea that you don't own your own car, but you just be on board. It's also a matter of insurance. If you are just on board, it's not your task to be insured or to be responsible on what happened inside. And the first one is, of course, an evolution of private car. I say that now they could become two different markets. Somebody they talk each other, sometimes not. And this is why we made this call for inputs 3 months ago, and it was very interesting and formative also for me. In my previous experience, I've been in charge as deputy mayor of mobility in Milan. It's also part of my passion and also of my skills. But once is to read something and to be interesting, and the other is the journey I made weeks after weeks with many of you, with many companies, operator, institution, to see all the problems that are facing who is studying and trying to do this revolution for maybe a decade. More of 70 companies and center of studies from 20 European and non-European countries participated to the call. I brought a great enthusiasm in many of you, many projects, most of them small, some larger, some are ready to scale up, some other not. It is the normal. Many of you facing administrative problems. European problems, yes. National state problems, yes. Cooperation among a national state and European level, yes and yes. Problem in funding, of course, but also ideas to try to solve, and ecosystem that try to cooperate among different projects. That is important if we want to scale up, involving everybody and not only the best project we have. So starting from that, I tried to focus 4 points that I think if we work together, even by the Commission, we could do in the next months. And we need to do that in months, not in years, because if not, we lose our last chance to be inside the project. So first is modernize EU type approval procedures. Remove small series restriction to allow manufacturers to invest and produce more vehicles. This is important, but we have also to know that many manufacturers are not ready to scale up. So it's a two-direction problem, but it's mandatory because we can't go on with, how is your project? Fantastic. How many cars? We have 3 cars, but we think in 3 years we will have 10. Great, but it's no more time. We have to make type approval procedure more flexible and gradual, giving space to innovative technology, and work within the United Nations context to promote harmonizing global type approval rules. Second, implement large-scale testbeds. Begin mass experimentation and deployment of autonomous vehicles across Europe. If we ask European citizens if they think autonomous vehicle is future of present, they will say future. They don't see it's happening. We need to show them something new. There is something new on our streets. Otherwise, they will not ask us to invest more. We have to establish cross-border test beds to foster greater harmonization. It's also that you work months and months to be authorized to test in your country, and then months and months to do the same test in another European country. We can do better. Work with cities and regions to create local sandboxes and make citizens accustomed to autonomous vehicles. I'm trying to get my part for the next event in Milan. I'm asking cities from Italy to subscribe to a declaration. I want to have this experimentation in my city. And it's interesting because many are signing and others say, oh, but it's not happening. So we need to give them the opportunity to see. Third point, concentrate funding. That is fundamental and is something we ask, or I ask European Commission. I think it was fair and correct for the past to support many projects, but now we have to scale up. My idea, the idea listening many of you in those periods, we have to foresee and deploy projects where there are at least 100 vehicles and involve at least 4 European member states, even because we can't finance a project in every single country. And we have to work on the fact that there are not only urban projects, but urban and suburban, because autonomous vehicle can help to reduce those distances. We need to demonstrate this. And we have to leverage private capital to help a pilot project to scale up and becoming to European championship. If we concentrate public funds in a few projects with many countries involved, I think we go even a direction to private capitals to decide, okay, if I trust this technology, I know those projects are ready and supported well by public sector. Fourth, harmonizing testing and deployment rules. Develop harmonized rules, European rules with regard to the testing of autonomous driving system. Encourage member states to develop harmonized national rules that allow for the deployment of autonomous vehicles on public roads. It's false that there are not national investment on autonomous vehicles, but they are investing in different technology and in different rules. That it's worse than non-investing. We have to cooperate to do the same thing in all the 27 countries. It's not easy. Some they had very good rules. Some they don't have rules. Some they have rules that are not so good. But the problem is that there are all different rules. These don't help companies. And we have to understand that there is USA, China, maybe somebody else in Asia, and or there is Europe, or there is nobody of our country alone. So I think it's a hard fight. I thank you also, my colleague Elise, that is here from EPP, because we have also to involve our colleagues on the fact that this is a real revolution for our economy, for our mobility. But I also know that many of you are ready to fight to realize it. And I hope we can have great results during this mandate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierfrancesco, for this vision and for bringing us here today. Now really honored to welcome Maïve Rutte, the Deputy Director General of DG for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs, to hear the European Commission's perspective.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure to have the occasion to address you today at the European Parliament, and I wish to express my sincere congratulations to MEP Pierfrancesco Maran for prioritizing this indispensable discussion. As you rightly said, very often our conversations about the future of automobile industry concentrate very much or even only on the CO2 targets, while we should be talking about the huge transformation ahead of us, which is really a societal transformation, much more than just simply a very narrow industry policy or transport issue. So I do believe that today you have already set the scene broad enough to allow us to have really a broader vision, to look at the sweeping transformation that this industry is going through. And not only the industry, it's really, as I said, a societal change as well, as we look towards clean, autonomous vehicles, which can provide various types of services beyond what we could maybe even envisage today. And all of this, of course, on the global scale where competition is getting more and more tough every day. As you all know, the automotive industry is not just a crucial component of our economy. In many ways, it is a pillar of our European identity. And I found it very telling what you mentioned about the pride of having a car. So it's, of course, for many families, for many individuals, something that they take pride in, and something that, of course, is also very much needed for just everyday practicalities. But we do recognize that, of course, here we are looking at the need on technological competence, but also that we're looking at something that is offering millions of jobs and is very important for people in Europe. And therefore, as this industry undergoes these monumental transformations towards green and digital future, we find ourselves tasked with responding in a way that is not only maintaining our leadership position in automobile manufacturing, but also ensures sustainable and inclusive growth. And I believe the elements of really making sure that the regions and cities come along is perhaps something that will be picked up also in the conversations today. So it is against this backdrop that the Automotive Action Plan was developed in the Commission, focusing on consolidating Europe's standing in the global market while also promoting economic development that enriches all corners of our union. The action plan focuses on innovation and digitalization. It also looks at supply chains, which many of you know is also a problematic area currently, with many of our inputs coming from China, particularly when we talk about electrification of the transport. And then we also in the action plan address issues such as skills availability and social dimension, so that all of it together could indeed increase the global competitiveness of our car manufacturing. And at the core of this comprehensive strategy lies our commitment to driving automation, which indeed is rightly addressed by the first pillar of our action plan, focusing on innovation and digitalization. Driving automation represents both a challenge and a unique opportunity to redefine the future of our automotive sector, as well as our transport system overall. Over the past years, we have made significant strides in adopting harmonized rules for assisted and automated driving. In doing so, we also made sure that our advancements align with international standards, keeping public safety and security at the forefront. In particular, we were the first world region establishing a regulatory framework for the approval of fully driverless vehicles. But of course, as you already rightly pointed out, we were the first, but we also limited it in a very, let's say, small use cases, such as small, serious, and very specific use cases. So what we really need to be looking at today is this broader question, the broader vision, and the choice between mobility as a service, perhaps a fully autonomous vehicle that can provide service, or do we still stick to the logic of simply automating the driving where somebody still needs to be sitting at the wheel? And I do believe that this really is a debate which needs to happen and is not necessarily yet there. European manufacturers have already taken significant steps forward, making innovative technologies available to the market. Vehicles boasting highway self-driving capabilities and automated parking, for example, are no longer just concepts. They are already operational, well embodied by innovations such as the BMW and Mercedes-Benz Highway Chauffeur, which is indeed an advanced automated parking system and can be seen in places like Stuttgart Airport. Yet the deployment of these innovations is certainly hindered by substantial obstacles within our single market. You mentioned here services that could be offered by autonomous vehicles. We know the robot taxis being tested in many places in Europe. Not easy to go ahead on this. So although harmonized rules for vehicles exist and our manufacturers are ready to implement solutions, regulatory differences across member states limit widespread adoption. Furthermore, traffic laws, which still mandate the physical presence and control of the driver, restrict autonomous operations. And moreover, the constraints on testing vehicles on public roads certainly do not help getting a more broad testing or robot taxis here in Europe to get in the broader use case. So this context provides the rationale for specific targets within the Automotive Action Plan, particularly concerning testing and deployment. We aim to finalize a globally harmonized regulatory framework and ease restrictions to enable seamless testing on public roads across member states. Very importantly, we aim to establish indeed these cross-border test beds, which you mentioned, to enable the first steps on real-world commercial operation. The enthusiasm for these test beds has already resulted in expressions of interest, signifying not just the potential for progress, but also the shared commitment across Europe to advance in this domain. The race to harness these technologies is ongoing, and I do believe that if we fail on this, we will really face a significant risk of becoming irrelevant and losing our important third country markets, which we currently enjoy. And we do, of course, believe that this is also a realization that is now taken forward by this call to action, and where member states, I hope also the members of parliament here, can join forces and really help unlock the driving automation's vast potential. And we, of course, cannot compromise on safety and cybersecurity. So this is something we all understand, but perhaps there will be better ways of addressing it instead of the current very rigid rules. We understand that these are non-negotiable and the foundational elements we want to maintain, but let us look together how we can nevertheless make more testing and progress possible. So to close, let me just state one more time that Europe stands at a pivotal crossroads in automotive innovation. And by uniting our efforts, by embracing collaboration, by really bringing goodwill and innovative minds together, we should be able to really capitalize on this transformative opportunity. I thank you for your attention, and I want to mention that in the later panel, one of my colleagues will be here, although I will not be able to stay for the full event. But I do believe that this discussion today is really very important, and we're looking forward to working closely with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to listening to the policymaking conversation at the end. And now, to give us an overview of where we are with autonomous vehicles in Europe, but also worldwide, I'm really delighted to welcome Dr. Stefan Dreher, who leads Ertico's focus on connected, cooperative, and automated mobility.
Good afternoon. It's a really honor to be here, and thank you very much to MEP Mr. Pier Francesco Maran for organizing this important event to drive the deployment of CCAM forward. I think we are many experts working on that for many years, strongly believing in the benefits of automation to improve overall mobility, but it needs, of course, to be properly implemented to address our social needs. So I have the challenge today to give you an overview of automated vehicles in Europe and in the world. So I say challenge because, in particular, in the last months, there have been a lot of developments in terms of technology, expansion, and as well partnerships in the value chain. So my overview is only highlighting main trends, and it's not meant to be exhaustive. So So let me start maybe with the US. A lot of facts and figures here, but so you will have the slides afterward. It's just for me to highlight main things, but I would like to start with US indeed by mentioning this robotaxi race that we are facing today with three players, Waymo, Zoox, and Tesla, which are really emerging here as key competitors. And what is interesting is that they all have distinct approaches to technology, development strategy, and as well fleet design. So if we look at Waymo, for example, they are operating retrofitted vehicles. They have a strong expansion at the moment with more than 1,500 vehicles. We'll be adding 2,000 soon. And they are expanding as well by including their services, for example, in ride-hailing platforms like Uber. Will go soon to Miami, Washington, and also now, interestingly, seeking permission to test in New York City, which is a very challenging environment, probably the most important market in terms of ride-hailing, and where other players like Cruise failed in the past. It's also a commercial service with more than 250,000 paid trips per week. I think 10 million trips in total so far. And some studies show that actually the costs are higher than Uber and Lyft by 30 to 40%, and people are still paying. So it shows really the willingness for people to pay for that. And interesting as well is the integration in transit, as now they are having a transit pilot program with credits for rides that connect you to the transit station. Zoox has a very different approach here. They have built custom bi-directional pods, so really optimized for urban environments. They have been going through extensive testing, and what is interesting, they will just launch now their first production facility to produce 10,000 units per year, starting one per day at the moment. And they have a commercial service that will launch this year. So this will be a second commercial service that will be interesting to watch. Then you probably heard about Tesla and the robotaxi paid on demand service. So this is another approach here with personal vehicles that can be used as robotaxis when they are not used. They just launched. Of course, some issues have been already reported. So let's see how this develops. And then we have other players like May Mobility. They also have a commercial service here with a connected approach. So using connectivity, 5G to improve security. In the trucking industry as well, we have a lot of developments in the US. Aurora is launching their first commercial driverless trucking on public roads in Texas. So I think with the robotaxi providers that I mentioned before, and now we have at least 4 paid commercial services already in the US. So we can really see how that will evolve. Something I would like to mention as well is that if you look at the market in the US, a lot of European technology is already available there. We have a lot of cooperation with European companies, not necessarily automation companies, but at least from the automotive industry. Moya is starting to deploy in the US. Holon, the German manufacturer of shuttles, will have a manufacturing plant in Florida. They are cooperating with the authorities there as well. May Mobility is partnering with Italian minibus factory, Tecnobus. Wave is launching a program in San Francisco. And Kodiak Robotics is also partnering with Way, which is a German remote operation company. I would like to say we spoke a lot about as well the challenges for regulation in Europe, but I would say that in the US as well, actually across the states, there are different regulations. Within particular, there can be some states with enacted legislation, some others with executive orders, some others with no legislations. And now there's a strong wish from the current administration to facilitate full automated vehicle integration by removing the regulatory barriers. So there are similar developments there as well. For China, it's a different landscape. So here we are really shifting in the race from the technology proof of concepts to a scaling, really impressive scaling and commercial viability check. It moves from China first to now really international expansion. It's interesting to know that there are more than 170 passenger vehicle brands there. I guess that many of us just know about 10 of them. So there's a strong appetite for technology. So our penetration rate of level 2 passenger vehicles is really important there. And we also have different non-traditional players or consumer electronic companies like Huawei or Xiaomi that are really building computer on wheels with increasing computing power, but more efficiency. So more than 70 costs reduction now for the latest model of Pony AI. What we see also the strong expansion I mentioned, so Baidu present in 15 cities across the world, WeRide as well in 30 cities, now coming to Switzerland, Turkey. But what is well to note, and that's the same for US and the robotaxis, there is an overall revenue growth, but still net losses. Huge investments, 10 billions in some cases. And now in particular here we see in China, the increasing operational costs in the end are something very important. But it's very interesting to see how this will validate the market. China is as well, all the expansion is bolstered by strong support from the government. There are initiatives from the Chinese government, such as establishing pilot zones, issuing licenses and developing regulations and standards. There is more than 32,000 kilometers of roads actually that have been really established, especially for AV testing, and 120 millions of kilometers have been already accumulated with 20 pilot cities. I would like to mention as well other regions, in particular in Asia Pacific. So Japan is a very interesting place to look at because they have a similar approach, I would say, than Europe, a strong focus on societal acceptance, social inclusion. And they have a similar approach to safety than us. So they the first approach with developing level 2 or 3 support from vehicle manufacturers, and then a careful introduction of level 4 with really redundancy from the infrastructure, making sure that everything is supported by connectivity and infrastructure. South Korea, a very important ecosystem to watch, with as well as strong support from infrastructure. And New Zealand as well, so we have a manufacturer there at Omeo, that has quite strong presence in Europe, in Luxembourg and in the UK in particular. And many of the US players I mentioned, like Waymo, are actually deploying now as well or testing at least in Japan. So now to Europe, I would just like to mention that we have technology in Europe. We don't have to oversee that. So this is just a representation. We have really a representation of the whole ecosystem with traditional car manufacturers focusing on the level 3. We have Wave, Werner, which are producing robotaxis, and we have the shuttle providers and operators, Moya, as well, manufacturers, Eversum, Holland, Oftech, and as well for logistics, we have a strong presence there. And without forgetting as well the software stack, which is essential for automation with players like Oxa. And all these technologies, the European technologies, and as well from US or China, have been already used in many projects and research projects so far. I just would like to highlight that we don't have to forget all these projects. We have been working in projects funded by the European Commission at Tertico, like the projects FAME and SICK Ambassador, on collecting information from all the testing and the pilots, more than 400 projects at the moment. And we have developed a common evaluation methodologies to have a learning from all these projects and see how, and this can really serve as well to the public authorities to learn and see what can be the wider impacts. And then what we would like to do now next is to start really also monitoring the deployments. So for example, I started here mapping some of the initiatives on the right, some of them in gray for like the deployment in London by Wave or in Zagreb by Verne will start only next year, but a lot of is still happening already in cooperation with the cities and the authorities and the operators. That's very important. So if I would like to summarize a bit our approach in Europe, the strengths and the challenges. So of course we have the competitiveness challenge. I think there are some actions that were mentioned on the actions to regain the leadership position, the Automotive Action Plan, the European Connected and Automated Vehicle Alliance. But what I would like really to insist on is that we have been focusing on increasing step by step the complexity, and we would like to focus on human centricity. So that's why we first developed more level 3 vehicles with European manufacturers. And now we are closing the gap for level 4 with an integration in public transport as a model. We have a tradition of focusing on safety and reliability with strong ex-ante regulation for vehicle safety. We have focused on standardization, interoperability. We are leading the way, I think, in connectivity and V2X service adoption. And we are pioneers, I would say, in innovative regulations. I say innovative because, for example, AI Act is really the first comprehensive act on artificial intelligence worldwide. And we have a focus on stakeholder collaboration. We have the CECAM Partnership for Research and Innovation. And now we have started some other alliances like the EFAT, the platform of member states, looking into challenges for member states, and as well the coalition, which is working on the cities and regions to see how operators can cooperate and exchange lessons learned. So that's my last slide. I think I would like to really also mention that it's a good fact that we have this event today, but we also had a plenary recently by the European Parliament on the framework conditions for competitive, efficient and sustainable public transport services. And this is a very good combination. I think there, Commissioner Tzitzikostas reminded that public transport must remain the backbone of sustainable urban mobility, requiring public support and shared efforts. And I think that combines very well with what we would like to achieve here today. I mentioned the European Coalition, which had a very good meeting last week, organized by the French Ministry in Paris, where we had good discussions on what needs to be done and what operators expect. And then I would like to remind again also well about the work of the CECAM partnership, which is having now the big call for 2026 on large-scale demonstrations of 100 million. Well, here the idea is really to fund flagship projects, large-scale projects in Europe. And there's also a cooperation here planned with cities, with an open call of interest for cities and regions to cooperate on this research. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stefan. And now I think we're going to do a little change of stage. So thank you very much to our first three panelists. And I would like to welcome up here, please, Sarah, Henrik, Fabio, and Jonas, if you could join me up here. We're just going to change the name tags. And Mihai, come here. Mihai, you're here. Sarah, you're here. Perfect. Well, we're going to deep dive in some of those examples that Stefan mentioned with five European companies that are actually deploying and testing today. So they're each going to have 6 minutes to present what they're doing today. So we are going to be starting with Mihai Sirca, the Deputy Director in charge of EU Affairs at Transdev. Mihai, I think you have this one.
Thank.
Perfect.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Tim, for your kind introduction. I'm going to jump directly to the slide because I know that I have a few minutes. So for those who know Transdev or who need to remember who is Transdev, so we're a public transport operator. We're one of the largest private public transport operator operating in 19 countries around the world. We're roughly transporting, 13 million of passengers per day. And when you think to Transdev, we have a very large palette of transport means 16 transport means, including the autonomous vehicles. So the journey of autonomous vehicles is very long at Transdev. We're starting and only put there the big milestones. We started in 2005 with the first commercial service on a dedicated lane. What we need to discuss when we speak about autonomous vehicle is what's the use case that we speak about. So in 2005 was a service, not an experimentation, and that service is still running today. In 2017, we had the first mixed traffic autonomous vehicle project. In 2019, we started to operate a large fleet of vehicles of Waymo. We speak very often about Waymo that we forget to speak also about the operator behind the vehicles. And in 2023, we had the first automated shuttle project without onboard operator. And we are still doing this kind of operation all over the world. The previous speakers told us that we had more than 400 projects around the world. And this is a topic that we need to address all together. So just to come back to some facts. So once again, we have operating vehicles, more than 10 technologies. I put only there the public one. So basically Transdev tested almost everything that is interesting on the market. We had more than 5 use cases dedicated to share mobility, dedicated to the public transport, because it's important to discuss not only about automated vehicle, but automated vehicle integrated in the shared mobility with the public transport generally. And we had more than 50 deployments in 10 countries in Europe and in US. But to be very honest, even if it can be impressive, let's see on the right side, each time when we operate vehicles was with a very low level of service. So they're not working very well, except few of them. Most of the operation that we had was with a safety driver in an operational domain design. So as long as we have the safety driver, we don't have a business model. And most of the deployment that we had around the world were with less than 5 vehicles. So again, it's not at the scale. But at the end, I put today, Transdev had a team of more than 1,000 people dedicated to autonomous vehicles, and most of them are in USA for a specific operation with Waymo. You understood very well there. When we speak about the shared mobility and the integration of the public transport, you have basically two situations. We speak about autonomous vehicle for public transport network. The fact is today we have low and medium maturity. When we speak about the investment, we speak about millions of euro. When we speak about the number of kilometers, it's only 1,000 or 10 of 1,000, and ability to scale is slow or medium. But when we are on the other side, on the robotaxi, they're almost ready, and the business model will come there quite soon. The big actors spend more than 1 billion by year. On the other side, we speak about millions, and it's very very scaled, I would say. We speak about hundreds of vehicles operating in the same area. So if you want to do something, we need to do that all together at EU level. So I'd say that without a strategic EU action, autonomous vehicle progress, we bypass public transport needs. So we had some question that we want to raise all together. So we know that the robotaxi autonomous vehicle market is there, and it's ready for the, I would say that the next step for the profitable step, and we are quite sure that will be in the next very next years. But the public transport is more than automated vehicle. Public transport must serve everybody, and at affordable price, I would say. So we need somehow altogether to work on use cases dedicated to public transportation. And what we need today to have this integration of autonomous vehicle in public transport, we need to have mature, what we call that, safety certified technology. We need to remove the safety driver. As long as we have a safety driver inside the vehicle, we don't have a business model. We need to have what we call EU type approved vehicles, and all the technology, full redundancy we need around. And we need to have that very important thing for automated shared automated vehicle is the supervision side. And altogether can be done if we have upskilled people ready to work on that. So my very last slide is, we all agree that we need to concentrate public money. We need to strengthen the collaboration to accelerate the pace of the development. But I absolutely agree with all 4 elements that MEP Maran showed up. But I think it's something that we're missing here. It's what we call in business make or buy strategy. We need all together to make a roadmap and to see what we want all together to achieve, and what should be done by Europeans and what should be done by extra-European. I think my previous speaker explained that we are doing a lot. Maybe we are doing too much. We need to concentrate on some building blocks, I would say, that are important for our industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mihai. And you will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end of all these presentations. So Sarah, over to you. Sarah Gates, Director of Global Public Policy at Wayve in the UK.
My slides?
It's this one. It should work.
On here?
Yeah.
We've got it. Okay, cool. Great. Well, thanks for having me, everyone. It's really exciting to be here and see lots of familiar faces. I lead the global public policy function for Wayve. And yeah, it's really exciting to see this paper and it's called for Action on Ideas, because we're extremely supportive of increased action in Europe and seeing particularly harmonized testing and deployment rules. And that's because Wave is developing artificial intelligence, which powers driver assistance and self-driving technology. And we're not focused on one use case, and that's very important because we talk about use cases a lot, but I'd actually encourage us to talk more about the underlying platform technology, because that's actually what will get us self-driving across use cases. And actually, most of the industry now is moving away from vertical integration, and they're much more focused on developing systems that can be integrated into a range of vehicle types. And those vehicle types would be passenger vehicles, but they would also be like commercial vans, logistics, HGVs, and of course, buses that would serve public transport. So from our point of view, autonomous driving is definitely an AI problem. And I think when Wave started out in 2017, that was potentially a contrarian thing to say, but that's no longer the case. So Wave's mission is to reimagine autonomous mobility through embodied AI. And as you can see here, we're starting with automotive, but actually we think the benefits of embodied AI, and what we mean by that is literally encapsulating artificial intelligence into a physical machine, can go far beyond automotive and actually have broader impacts across manufacturing, logistics, domestic robots, and commercial tasks. And of course, if you're going to have end-to-end uses of autonomous mobility, you will actually need a lot of these kind of broader applications to complete end-to-end journeys and end-to-end services. So as I said, we're focused on building end-to-end artificial intelligence for self-driving, and this is really important. So the reason we do not have self-driving at scale right now is because no one has come up with a viable business model. And that is really held back by the vertical integration of the technology. Incredibly expensive vehicles, incredibly expensive engineering. It is why we see a lot of the development today focused in certain areas of the world. But I actually think Wave is a really exciting story. We're HQ'd in the UK. We recently opened an office in Germany, and we're really, really committed to scaling in Europe. And we would love the support of European policymakers to do that. Because speaking from experience, we're now testing in many different countries around the world. Four locations regularly, including the US, the UK, Japan, and Germany. But we are doing test runs in many more countries, and having direct experience of having to navigate different testing frameworks globally, it is incredibly complex to get vehicles on the road in Europe. So anything we can do to make that easier and really focus on development here will mean that services come to market here more quickly. And time is of the essence because companies don't make investment decisions overnight. We need years lead time, which is why we need to see continued action on regulation. And that will support the development of these platform systems, which the whole industry is moving towards. So we're focused on building a sensor and silicon agnostic, basically a low-cost solution, which can scale from level 2, so advanced driver assistance technology, to driverless technology. And level 2 is incredibly important to the story of self-driving. So artificial intelligence-based systems are built on data, and the more learning and experience they have from consumer vehicles now, the smarter they can become for fully driverless services in the longer term. So we should think about this as a holistic development and glide path to commercial deployment in Europe. And we're building our artificial intelligence for global scale. It's no good to have city-by-city deployments. It simply won't create a viable business model. We have to think beyond cities, and we have to think about large-scale testing across borders and facilitating that collaboration between different countries. Because if companies have to go through onerous processes that are incredibly detailed and change from one city or one location to another, you simply won't bring the technology there because there are too many alternatives globally that are easier to test in. We're also trying to build technology that's not reliant on high-definition maps. This is incredibly important. Some of the older approaches to building this technology were incredibly expensive because they relied on programming rules and relied on high definition maps, which essentially means you have to constantly map the world around you. This is becoming something that the industry itself is trying to move away from on the whole, so that we can create scalable solutions that will serve all use cases across the world. So where we're testing at the moment, so Wave started out in 2017 in the UK. We've been testing in the UK since 2018. We recently moved to Germany. So this year we opened an office in Germany. We're growing there. We're just located just outside Leonberg near Stuttgart. We also have an office in the US. So we're doing testing out of our US office in California. And we have offices in Canada and a testing location in Japan. So across those 5 sites, we have over 650 employees now. We're growing at pace, and I think we're a really good story of where we can have a leader in European development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And now let's move on to Fabio Pressi, the CEO of A2A, an electric vehicle charging infrastructure company from Italy. And he's also a professor at Luis Business School in Rome. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon. Just 2 words about A2A. A2A is an Italian, one of the largest Italian multi-utility company. We are listed. 50% is owned by 2 cities, City of Milan and City of Brescia. So this is why in our company the DNA is starting solution for the cities, especially in different builds. Of course, we operate in energy sector, waste, heat, and of course in smart infrastructure. I'm CEO of A2A e-mobility, the company that is dealing with electric mobility, but the project is under our innovation department. This project started last year in January 2024. And we put together the competence that we have in Italy in University of Milan, together with our idea to find a solution for car sharing, especially for small cities. The idea behind this use case is very simple. A user call it the vehicle, called by, of course, by an app. The car comes in a slow speed, and this is an important topic because it related to the regulatory framework. So the maximum speed is 30 kilometers per hour. Then you can use the vehicle as normal sharing, and then you can leave. Why electric? Because of course we are also working in wireless charging in order to decrease the cost of operation of the sharing system. And so putting together the autonomous part that is related to a tech development plus the new way of charging, decrease the cost of sharing and make it possible. So the idea now, of course, is we are using all this kilometer to test, because I'm perfectly agree with Sarah, is an AI problem. We need data to increase the quality of the software inside the vehicle. And this is exactly what we are doing now. Along this year, we are collecting data and we are working to improve the quality of the service. What to say more on this? We think that the technology should be plug and play. So we are using the technology not only on this vehicle, but able to move depending, of course, of different use case. Because we strongly believe that, especially for regulatory framework, we need to test and to have the possibility to test the technology, not the vehicle. And we would like to see the debate about how the process will be in Europe on this. So nothing more. For our point of view, it's a very exciting project because it's a European one. The technology starts in Italy, and we are testing a new use case that we want also to understand how it could be scaled up in the rest of the countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fabio. Now we move to Sweden for Henrik Green, head of Einride Autonomous.
Thank you, and thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. While the screen is coming up, I will start to talk about Einride. So today we are a global company, a logistic company, although also an autonomous tech company, but providing logistics, which is one of the fundamental differences to many other players out there. We were founded on the idea of transforming the transport industry in three main areas: efficiency and capital utilization by using digital tools and AI to optimize the flows of transport, in sustainability and the footprint of CO2 going from diesel heavy combustion engine propulsion to purely electric propulsion, and then fundamentally as the last of the three pillars, to go with automated transportation also on public road instead of manual transportation on public road. So based on these pillars, we started to develop the in-house technologies that are required for this transformation, which is what you can see represented here, the platform or the grid. We started to acquire electric heavy-duty vehicles, and we started to build our own autonomous heavy-duty vehicles. And today with that, we are proud to share with you that we are one of the largest electric heavy-duty fleet transport providers in the world. We also operate commercially in Europe, fully autonomous driverless heavy-duty trucks in daily operation, and we also do so in US. And what are fundamentally the pieces that we bring together? And a bit closer, thank you. So what are the pieces that we fundamentally bring together, and which of these pieces do we actually develop in-house? Well, this is a question that many ask, because when we talk about the ecosystem, it's the enabler to push this frontier of transformation in the mobility or transport sector. But one player cannot do it all, but we need them all. So by having an electric fleet of heavy-duty vehicles, which are of course in our case built by all the best heavy-duty truck manufacturers of the world, which would be the Scanias and the Daimlers and the Volvos and the DAFs and everybody else that I forgot to mention. Charging networks that we also have to provide and install, but together with partnerships and the experts in building the actual facilities of charging. We have operational partners that provide us with drivers. We do build in-house the digital freight platform. That is one of our key internal IPs. And we do develop and build the full autonomous vehicle and the full autonomous stack on the driverless heavy-duty vehicle. However, manufacturing is done by a partner, a heavy industrial partner in the Netherlands, who can produce these in numbers that we never could. So looking back at the timeline, we were founded back in 2017. Already in 2019, we were the first in the world to drive heavy-duty electric vehicle on public road. We did so in Sweden without the safety driver on board. A year later, we took a world record in heavy-duty driverless vehicles at Goodwood Racetrack, driving at 85 kilometers an hour with our first generation of truck. We brought that to US in 2022 on public road, and we started to operate daily in US, and we are still operating today on that site since 2023. We drove first time on public road with a customer in Stockholm, Sweden, nighttime in 24, and we started to operate commercially in Sweden also 24. So these are the autonomous trucks we're talking about. So we have the first generation, which were our proof of concept. The vehicles that we are operating commercially today, fully autonomous, are what we call generation 2 here. They are more of a product market fit. They are frankly more hand-built than industrialized. We are looking at generation 3, which we will start to produce next year with our industrial partner in the Netherlands, built both for rigid cargo hold and container transportation. And we can build that in thousands per year from an industrial scale perspective. And then we have the tractor trailer version of that coming 2 years later. But we also realized a year ago, you could say most likely influenced by the state of the world that we are in and that we are also aware of. And we started to see the opportunity that our automation technology can be used not only for civilian transport, but actually also in defense transport. Doing so, we could save more lives than actually addressing the traffic incidents of the world by automating public roads. We could also save lives by introducing automation into hazardous and dangerous zones where no people should be, ideally. And therefore, we launched the software as a service version of our autonomous stack, and we're working with our first pilot customer on installing that into a defense application. Which again brings the ecosystem I talked quite a bit about. And this is also then the software stack. So one more double click on the technology. So inside what we do in-house, we have the Einride driver, which many call the virtual driver, which is the AD software. And I concur fully with the previous speakers and companies here that it's the absolute right way to go for an end-to-end explainable machine learning stack in order to solve the self-driving problem. We use sensors and compute from the usual providers. We don't build them in-house, we source them. We do the safety case in-house, which is the critical point in getting the permits and the approvals to drive on public road. We have the control tower to monitor our fleet, and we have the hardware of the vehicles. So, quick look at a few customer cases. This is the Swedish use case, which we launched last year. And up to date, we have shipped 2,500 EU pallets and driven 541 ton kilometers. And we are the first in EU to start fully autonomous driverless operation commercially. In US, we operated now since August 23 and have transported 7,500 EU pallets and over 750 ton kilometers fully autonomous, which was the first likewise in US. And we have announced that we have a contract with DP World to start deploying these autonomous trucks generation 3 for container transportation in the port of Abu Ali in Dubai. This is how we foresee the progression of ODDs. And in order to not take too much time, I will be fairly quick by saying we are moving now from factory to warehouse and warehouse to hub and terminal to terminal. And the next important goal here is to go hub to hub. Together with that, also to be mentioned, I think, at least shortly, connectivity is key, we believe, for all of us. And we see a similar initiative is needed on bringing connectivity to the road networks and to sites in order to secure high integrity connection with any autonomous operated part. And summarizing myself, and I think this has been said by almost all previous speakers, create by being here public-private partnership, rethink the regulation. Today, we get permits and approvals for one vehicles at one site. That's enormous, tedious to scale. We can industrially build these vehicles in thousands, but we need a way to go from one to a fully homologated European fleet, which is a rather long leap in one step. And as has been said before, what we can do in the intermediate term to start experimenting at scale before a type approval is possible is key for us going forward here, as well as strategic public funding for this kind of innovation. And a unified approach across Europe. It's all been said. So I guess with that, I thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Henrik. And now to Moya, part of the Volkswagen Group, Jonas Wieger, the Public Affairs Manager. Jonas.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm part of Moya. We're part of the Volkswagen Group, and we have already developed a driver-based ride-pooling service in the city of Hamburg, always with the vision in mind to develop autonomous driving. And Hamburg is our proof of concept, and then we will enable other public transport operators in Europe to deploy autonomous mobility service. So autonomous driving will soon be part of everyday life in Europe, as is already the case. The video wasn't playing, sorry. As is already the case in China and the US. And it will happen, and we at MOIA are ready to deliver on our promises to go fully driverless, and we fixed our timelines in the last 3 years. But today, I'm here to discuss the necessary next steps in order to deploy large-scale projects. So reiterating, autonomous mobility is at our fingertips in Europe. And at MOIA, we're on track to receive full EU type approval in the EU by 2027. And achieving this, as you all know, means that we fulfill the highest safety standards worldwide. And to reach this goal, we're demonstrating our vehicles' capabilities in dense urban environments, but also adverse weather conditions. So in the cities of Hamburg, very rainy, as you all know, Munich, Oslo in winter conditions, but also in Austin, Texas. But enabling autonomous driving is only one thing. Success requires more than just vehicles, as you can see on the left. It is also about empowering operators to deliver efficient services, but also to make both customers and road users to feel safe, but also helping them at the same time, as you can see on the right, empowering operators to run these services efficiently and to make them independent of us, while also providing trainings, for example, for first responder interactions and all these topics. So we want to make operators independent, but we don't want to leave them alone. Today, we want to focus on solutions, right? And not complain all the time. And we've prepared two sets of solutions. So first, from a market perspective, and second, from a regulation perspective. So let's start with the market perspective. First, from our experience with our talks with many public transport operators, they still expect autonomous mobility services to be some kind of jack of all trade. So from our perspective, we think that we should prioritize speed over perfection to be able to compete on global markets. And this means, for example, we don't require every single autonomous vehicle to be fully accessible right from the start. Don't get me wrong, accessibility is super important, and we also offer fully accessible services in Hamburg. But why not only have a certain percentage of the fleet to be fully accessible with supporting personnel and the other percentage to be fully autonomous? Not every service needs to have its custom features. Not every service needs to have their own colored seats. Instead, we need industry standards, we need to focus on them, and we need to rethink the traditional boundaries of private and public mobility. We need to think about mobility as a whole system and not live these old boundaries. Second, we must rethink public transport beyond fixed lines and mass transportation. So we need to introduce flexibility into the system to create a new, comfortable and flexible alternative for people in rural, suburban, and city areas. And the goal is to offer an attractive public service. That's exactly what we need, and that will also help us with public acceptance. Of course, and we've heard that before today, we need large-scale projects that truly impact people's lives. And we need mobility services that serve the many and not the few. So let's look at the policy perspective. How can policymakers support us in deploying these large-scale projects? We've heard that a million times before today. Just to reiterate, we need to remove type approval restrictions. We're very thankful for the European Commission to work on that, and we're seeing tangible progress there. So we appreciate these efforts. But just to tell you one industry perspective, the German Ministry of Transport always asks us, where are your vehicles? Whereas when we talk to investors, they always ask us, why would we invest in your product if you don't have a scaling perspective? So this kind of problem needs to be solved as soon as possible, but I don't think that's the major barrier we talk about anymore. Second is we need to establish a EU funding framework for so-called model regions. So we do have these model regions in the German coalition treaty between the Social Democrats and the Conservatives. They want to do that, but we need them on an EU basis. And to live the European, to embody the European spirit, these regions could be and should be cross-border. So that would be a great idea from our perspective. But crucially, these services need to be sufficiently large to have a real impact on people's life. And third, and we've heard that before, many countries still need to create their legislation. And it's not only about traffic codes, but it's also about operational rules. And in the EU so far, only 3 countries have done so. Switzerland outside the EU has done so as well. And these existing frameworks need to be harmonized. And this is a huge challenge, but we're also seeing that the EU Commission is working on that. So we're very, very thankful for that as well. So, but we're not here for monologues. So if you have any questions, let's discuss now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonas. So we have about 4 minutes for questions. So if someone would like to ask a question, please go ahead. Yes.
Mihai mentioned in his scheme the importance of empowering local and regional authorities. I'd like to ask the speakers, what's the role you see as for local and regional authorities to support this European effort to advance autonomous vehicle technology in Europe?
Mihai, do you want to start? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Pedro, for this question. We speak a lot about technology, but at the end of the day, it's about the service, and the service is hosted by a city generally. So in terms of priority and in terms of governance, I would say, it's up to the city to decide which use cases should be addressed in that city in order to complement the public transportation with a very interesting shared mobility. So the city has a very important role in the governance of the technology, I would say, but more precise in the use case that will be addressed in that region. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to have a go on that? No. Any other question?
Hi, I'm Christina Olofsson. I work for Volvo Cars. We have an AI company that does AD and ADAS software, Zenseact in Sweden, who are now starting to develop also and train their models with synthetic data. So it would be interesting to hear from the panelists who commented that data is an issue in order to improve the software. What potential do you see in using synthetic data? Thank you.
Yeah, so on-road data is just one of the data sources we use. We actually have a whole host of data sources that are input into our overall data corpus, which trains essentially like a parent foundation model. And then that same model can drive all around the world, depending on where that model is, which it knows from GPS. It can then alter its driving style. And actually drive according to local road rules without us having to teach that model how to drive. So that model learns how to drive like that from the data input into the overall neural network. And so much of that data comes from our on-road testing, which is why we want to test as broadly as possible, including all across Europe. But synthetic data is definitely a huge part of both our training, but also our validation. So synthetic data becomes very important for validation of the models. So if you want to be able to replay a scenario, you have to be able to recreate that in a sim environment. So we invest a huge amount into our synthetic data regime. And we actually believe that in future, most of the testing and the evidence base for the safety case will come from synthetic data. And then, of course, the big challenge for industry is to prove the synthetic data correlates with the real world.
Thank you, Mihai.
Very shortly, people use synthetic data to bypass the problem of real data. So our technical colleagues told us that it's easier to train algorithms in USA, in China, because in Europe it's very complicated, regulatory speaking. So if we need to have synthetic data just because it's a regulatory problem, maybe we should address that GDPR problem at the beginning and to have all the algorithms and all the regulation we need to train data for that.
We don't use synthetic data to bypass regulation. Synthetic data is critical to develop the systems alongside on-road data. It's not one or the other. They would always both be used.
Okay, well, one last question and then we'll move to the next one. Please go ahead.
Well, yes, thank you very much for the presentation. Just one point, the value chain is, as was highlighted, hardware, software, and service when it comes to public transport or shared mobility. Mihai spoke about make or buy solution. Within Einride, you integrated a make and a buy solution to a full service. Per today, we see Europe focusing on a make solution. What do you think about a buy or a make and buy solution forward dynamics that we can put in place with regards to all the barriers for the buy solution from other countries?
Fabio, I see your...
Yeah, the comparison is not so easy because in the tech part, there are many single parts that can also be buyed, even if the core should be maintained in Europe. The software that is able, for example, to evaluate the control, to planning what to do is really the part that has to be maintained. The application, the sensoring for understanding and for moving the vehicle could be also buy. But for our point of view, the core of the system, so the planning and the capability to decide is part of things that has to be maintained in Europe.
Mihai?
Very briefly, there are two horizons, I must say. What we want to do altogether in 15 years and what we want to test altogether maybe the next year. So for the public transport, I'm not saying the vehicle is not important, but it's only a piece of the whole chain, I would say. So for actor like us, the supervision is much more important than the vehicle itself. So the integration and the use case of the service that we provide to the city is much more important. So if tomorrow is to use Chinese or American vehicles in Europe, for us it's a solution. The next question will be, is this the long-term vision that we want to have? The short vision, yes. The long vision, to discuss together.
Thank you very much. Please give a warm round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much. We're now going to deep dive in policy making and financing. So we're going to have a quick change of set. And I'm going to welcome here in my place, Evan Costagnola, the Senior Principal of Citify Europe, based in the Netherlands. Citify is a global strategic advisory firm that specializes in urban transformation and mobility. Evan, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Evan Costagnola. I am the Managing Director of Citify Europe, based in the Netherlands. We are a strategic advisory consultancy that focuses on aligning interests between the public and private sector to see and realize the mobility transition. We have a really fascinating conversation with some engaging speakers. I think MEP Marin really sold the concept very effectively and what the challenges and what the opportunities as well. Yes, Europe is a little bit behind, of course. We all know that. But what's a challenge is also an opportunity. One of the things that Europe has done a fantastic job on is focusing on the values that undergird the mobility ecosystem, and of course, what's going to happen as it relates to autonomous mobility. We're focusing much more on people-centered mobility. We're focusing on integration with public transport. We're focusing on that right to mobility, right? So this is good, but there's a lot of change that needs to happen. And I think this is what this conversation is going to really focus on, shifting away from smaller, low-impact projects, changing the regulatory paradigm to have much larger projects, much more investment, and get to scale and impact as quickly as possible. I'm going to invite my fellow panelists up to the stage, starting with Maria Cristina Galassi. She's the team leader of automated connected vehicles and safety with DG Row. Come on up. Next is Jens Giesecke, the MEP representing Germany. He's also the TRAN coordinator for European People's Party. Come on up. Next up, from the financial angle, is Patrice Liuazu, who's the Senior Policy Officer for the European Investment Bank. Welcome. And last but not least, Christian Merkt, who's the Director of EU Governmental Affairs, focused on digitalization and automated driving with BMW. He also wears another hat. He serves as the chairman of the CCAM Association. Welcome, panelists. Thank you for your time and your insights. Just to get us started, this is something that I like to focus on when we talk about automated mobility. Sometimes it's a little bit too much focused on the technology. I just want to get your sense of, taking a much higher 10,000 meter view. What are the outcomes that you're trying to achieve? And how does that change, or maybe it doesn't change as we start to think about accelerating the transition? Maybe once you start. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. So first of all, I would also like to express my thanks to the organizers and to MEP Francesco Maran for organizing this event. I'm happy to see everyone here and participate in the discussion. So from the Commission perspective, of course, we have laid down a strategy for connectivity and automation. And I think it's very important to highlight also connectivity, as was done also by some of the players. So it's not often in the discussion, but the strategy of the Commission is towards cooperative, connected, and automated driving. And I think this summarizes quite well this broader perspective that you were mentioning. And of course, we imagine a way also for the policymaker to stop a framework enabling the positive impact of this new technology on our society. And so we would like to indeed catalyze this positive impact and minimize the additional risk or possibly negative drawbacks. So in that sense, of course, the big focus is on increased vehicle safety and road safety, but also on reduced environmental impact, increased energy efficiency, and also we have we take into consideration, which is very important, also the social aspect. So we have the potential with driving automation of improving the inclusiveness of road transport. Also considering, for example, transport poverty, as we mentioned before in the previous session. So serve also rural areas or those users who normally would not have access to many mobility options. So in a nutshell, that's a vision for indeed catalyzing the positive impact of connected and automated vehicles.
Jens, from the Parliament view, what is your take on this?
Yes, thank you very much for having me, and my colleague Pier Francesco for this initiative. I think we have perhaps in a way not the perfect priorities, because if from the trans perspective in the Transport Committee, if it comes to the strategic dialogue and all the priorities we talk about a lot of legislation about Green Deal. Now we go to the Clean Industrial Deal. But it's all about regulation and, in a way, limiting possibilities. This autonomous driving, these autonomous vehicles, there we can have the potential to create opportunities for our market, of course, for our citizens. And this is the way we should work. We should prioritize. From my point of view, in the Commission, I think the top 10 priorities, there the autonomous driving is not in, because we have different focus on transformation to Clean Industrial Deal. So I think we need a change in these priorities in order to get things done. If we see the progress in this field, I think a lot happens in the United States and in Asia. And the simple question is, do we want to be a player? Do we want to make it happen in Europe? Or do we want to be a spectator? Like my colleague said, will we import the technology, or will we be in the driver's seat? So if we want to be in the driver's seat, I think we have to change the priorities. I think EPP is ready and S&D is ready. You know, in automotive, we are not always of the same opinion. We have some disputes on the ban of combustion engine. Perhaps sometimes it's difficult to get S&D on board. But I think today we can make a deal. I will help Pier Francesco on autonomous vehicles, and he will help me on the ban of combustion engine. Then we have a match, and we will make good progress for Europe. Thank you.
I'm actually interested to hear the private sector perspective, and also, of course, Christian, you represent a pretty broad stakeholder group with the CCHEM Association. What's your take? Is there a different approach that you would like to see in terms of outcomes?
Well, I think, thank you also for being invited to this very important panel. From my point of view, if Europe wants to regain a leading role, it would be wise not to exclude stakeholders that want to invest into the technology from the beginning. I mean, mobility transition is a process that is ongoing, also with private cars and conventional combustion engine cars. And I would see it a bit critical to assign the vehicle automation to this mobility transition. So I think this is the one aspect, and therefore in the CCHEM partnership, from the beginning of the partnership for R&I, we concentrated on all opportunity-driven use cases, logistics, public transport, private cars, trucks, freight logistics, and so on. And we should keep this innovation door open, and striving for European framework conditions that those who want to invest into the technology can really find a fruitful framework condition that eases this market scale up.
I've heard a sense of urgency. I've heard you want a greater focus on innovation. How do you balance maintaining a people-focused, a public interest-focused policy framework, but also advance a new technology relatively quickly and create new pathways for innovation? What's the right balance? Yeah, go for you, Christine.
Yes, right. So in that sense, of course, we believe that regulation cannot just be a showstopper to innovation, but should be rather an enabler. So that's the potential, and that's where we try to keep the balance. So as mentioned also in the keynote speech by our Deputy Director General, Maybrit Rutte, indeed, we have to be mindful about safety and security. These are central also to the digitalization and happening in the transport sector. And this is a bit our strength, and this is something that we can address in a robust way, and this is not done elsewhere in the world so far. So it's true that the need for a type approval framework might have slowed down a bit the next phases, but we have updated our legal framework quite quickly, even if we see some initial limitations. We are working to remove these limitations and then welcome robust and safe technologies on our roads. And this, of course, as I was saying, can enable the deployment of innovation at a different pace afterwards, because our citizens will know that someone already verified the criteria for the introduction of these products, of these new technologies, and will trust more. So a question that I ask often is, would you trust flying on a not validated, not verified airplane, or without air traffic control? So probably no one would do that. And so that's something that we also want to facilitate for autonomous vehicles.
Patrice, from the financial aspect, how is funding and financing or new innovative approaches to financing going to unlock the deployment that I think a lot of people in this room want to see, and unlock the innovation that folks want to see as well?
Thank you very much again also for the invitation. So that was a very interesting discussion also earlier. I mean, indeed, the IB is a policy taker, not a policy maker. So we actually align with the EU strategic objectives, and the automotive plan was one of the objectives that we have been following. And I must say that when we look at projects, we look at a number of issues in order to have bankable project. The IB being a bank, we need to have actually, this loan being reimbursed. That means that we need to look at a number of criteria in order to scale up, these projects, including the technology, the quality of the execution team, the path towards certification. Obviously, the regulatory framework is of essence. Because, for example, that some companies are burning cash, sometime in the range of 20, 30, 40 million euros. And if you don't get certification and you're not able, to go to market, then this is extremely capitalistic for these companies. But overall, I want to say that I think, and there are a lot of instruments being available at EU level today already. Not only from the IB, but also, from the EU, like the European Innovation Council, looking at more early stage projects, with earlier TRL. We have the private equity, obviously, ecosystem, where the European Investment Fund is also investing. And I think what is important is that we try to get some kind of, let's say, offer throughout the life cycle of companies, from startups, or let's put it that way, from ideas to IPOs. And I must say that the IB has been announcing last week a new program for, let's say, innovative companies that actually is very much in line with, I must say, project within the automotive sector, and including automated sector, what we're discussing today, because it's also a lot. I heard a lot about AI, digitalization, and this is something that I think the IB wants very much to support, including not only for corporates, OEMs, but also for startups. So this will be a new program that will be rolled out in the coming month. Having said that, again, we also have been rolling out a new product, which is called Venture Debt. Without getting into a lot of details, it's an instrument which is being actually prepared for companies that are either in the demonstration phase or ready to go towards commercialization, which have a high level of risk, don't have yet revenues, but do have a good business plan. And this is actually, a stage for the companies, a second valley of death also, that where you need to provide financing in order to help the company to scale up. And at the same time, it's too risky for commercial banks. So this is where we come with this dedicated instrument for high, potentially high growth companies with breakout technologies or high innovative component, which could very well be suited to this sector, I think. Well, actually, we have financed a company in that sector, so it is. But again, I think it's important that we look at all these aspects, the business plan, in order to. And I heard this morning, sorry, not this morning, earlier, that they were pleased to go for a critical mass, the best projects and so on. And obviously, when you want to provide finance, you're looking for, the best companies, obviously. So,
Jens, I think you have some opinions on this, on how to finance innovation in the automation space. What are your opinions here?
Oh, I think financing is crucial and, of course, needed. I think we need perhaps more coordination. We have Horizon, the Trans-European Network, but there is no really clue to bigger projects for autonomous driving. So I think in our projects which we learned earlier, there is a problem that there are very small-scaled projects, but we need a broader approach. So think bigger is perhaps the story. When at European level we were successful, we invented the Airbus in aviation. Perhaps we have to think in the same direction, not copy-paste Airbus, but at least bigger projects. From my German perspective, it has been mentioned, I was in the coalition treaty on the negotiations, and we have this model regions, but we just have this with France and Luxembourg. But we have other neighboring countries like Switzerland, okay, they are not European, but Austria, others. So we have to have more cross-border cooperation, and this has to be co-founded by European level. But it has to be identified, of course, as a priority. We will have the discussion from the European Commission. The Commission will come up 17th of July with the next framework for the next 7 years of spending. And there we have to identify, it is on infrastructure and it is on innovation. And there we have to see that these autonomous driving projects should play a major role. Unfortunately, this is not in the center of the discussion so far, but discussions like today, of course, help to bring it more in the center of the attention. So we need more events like this afternoon.
I'm curious, so you all painted very similar visions of what automated mobility should look like across Europe. There's some nuance, right? A little bit, maybe not difference of opinion, but different articulation. I think if you ask everyone in this room, there's probably 100 people in here, that same question, you'd get probably 20 to 30 other answers. So given the different stakeholders, public and private sector, how do you align all the interests and move forward? And I think the best person to answer that question is Christian, given your role with the CCAM Association.
Okay, sorry again, how to motivate public-private investments?
How do you align all the interests and move forward as an aligned group of stakeholders?
I mean, coming back to the financial topic, I would add one item. When it comes to AI implementation to autonomous vehicles, this is a real game changer in finance. And other industries are also struggling with that. And why shouldn't we look for funding of these horizontal layers like data storage or compute power that is not specifically needed only for autonomous vehicles, and create some environment where a huge part of these costs can be more competitive in the future. But now coming back to your question, how to proceed. I mean, what we've heard earlier, large-scale demo projects are very crucial to get the society more engaged with real services on a large-scale level. This is important. Then the funding is a second element that is needed to be resolved. And the third element, regulation, we talked also, I think this is pretty much advanced. However, the national rules and the single market approach for regulation still need some huge improvements. Yeah, and finally, yeah, finding strategies. I think we need to in the next couple of months, looking together with the investors, potential investors, on the current needs. Also, the aspect of buy and make is partially a part of it, and then formulate this strategy for the policymakers.
I think there's certainly some lessons learned from the American context, the Chinese context, and other regions, both positive and negative. What in your mind is the European path as it relates to advancing deployment, doing more testing, reducing barriers? What is the right approach for Europe? What is the pathway?
So if I may start on that. Well, as mentioned in the Automotive Action Plan that has already been described previously by many speakers, indeed we refer to test beds. And here we are also looking exactly at what is happening outside Europe. And what we can see is not large-scale deployment everywhere. So no one was able to do that yet, because there are many factors, but also including driving automation is difficult, and it's difficult for everyone. So what is happening is that indeed deployment, also commercial deployment, is happening vertically in specific location. And so that was indeed the idea behind establishing this cross-border large-scale test beds. And also so to foster the first step in the commercialization of the service and of the technology. and also to facilitate indeed a bit our players, also concerned for what concerns the current situation of fragmentation that was mentioned several times. So what we imagine is that these test beds not only are cross-border, so happening in several member states, but also have associated regulatory sandboxes, facilitating the legal framework in which this deployment can happen across the same test bed in multiple member states. And of course, one of the learnings will be about exactly the regulatory aspects. So what we can take on board to facilitate and harmonize the deployment after the testbed experience.
Jens, what's your opinion here?
Yes, thank you for the question. So I have experience from the ITS directive, where it was on the intelligent transport systems. Member states were quite hesitant to have a more ambitious approach, exchange of data. And of course, you need a lot of data in this regard. We have to do our homework, being more ambitious. If it comes to precise deployment of projects, of course, we have in Europe a very diverse approach, and if you ask in council for the top 3 projects to be deployed first, you will not have a majority for this, because of course 27 member states, 27 interests. Our approach is more a regional one, so we need to get things at local level done. So the cross-border thing is something where we can make, where we have a low-hanging fruit, and there we should have our focus on.
Shifting gears again, back to financing, systemic change, changing the mobility system of the day to something new. That is something that is typically a little bit expensive. You know, I think we talked about growing the pie a little bit. There needs to be more funding and more funding sources. But what about priorities? What are the priorities that we need to be funding, putting more funding towards over other funding opportunities? Is it data infrastructure? Is it physical infrastructure? Is it supporting services? Is it social infrastructure? What do you think is the right set of priorities first? You know, in the coming years. Perhaps it'd be good to get your perspective on
Yes.
this. Yeah.
I mean, on the priorities, I would give the floor to the Commission, obviously, but I would say that we are agnostic from a technology standpoint anyway, and perhaps, I mean, you were mentioning, you know, the EU approach just in the question before, and I think, and you also mentioned that we need a large chunk of funding because we need to finance the whole. I mean, we mentioned supply chain earlier, so. It's about infra, it's about AI, it's about data centers, you know, it's about energy, it's about softwares, it's about equipment, sensors, leaders. I mean, financing the whole supply chain is of essence. And I think if we want to have the critical mass and the capacity to finance all these projects, I mean, we're talking about scaling up, and I heard it several times before. Scale up comes quite often in a discussion, and not only for that sector. Obviously, we need to find a way to use money in a smart way, use budget in a smart way, which is limited. And I would say we have partnered with the Commission on a number of instruments where we share the risk. And I think public institutions should be here also to de-risk private investments and leverage. And this is what we try to do also with the Commission, with an InvestEU program, for example, where you use the EIB lending capacity with the risk taking of the EU budget, and by doing so, you can finance a higher risk project. I mean, I mentioned before the venture debt instrument, which is an instrument, you know, bridging the gap between high risk private equity and lower risk commercial loans. So these kind of instruments allow to leverage additional funding while addressing, you know, this kind of transformative innovation. And I think it's very important to be able to deploy it now that we're also in the light of the future, you know, MFF adoption in the coming days or proposal. I think it was a point that I want to make indeed. But in order to do that, we need to look also at good projects, because the idea is not to waste public resources, but the idea is to select good projects, you know, which can attract private investors or private lenders. And that's the only way to go if you want to reach some kind of critical mass in financing.
Maria Cristina, your perspective from the Commission, what do you think the priorities are as it relates to funding?
Thank you for the question. And I have to say that again, in the action plan, you can find a bit the holistic approach of the Commission towards the priorities, because we understood it's not enough to focus on something specifically. Indeed, it's not just about the automotive sector's conventional players, but we have to consider also the digitalization, shifting the focus from the hardware to the software. This involves also new player. So the action plan reflects this, indeed, revolution, also in terms of priority. But of course, as indeed was also mentioned before, it's important to decide where to invest our availability, because it's not infinite. So we need to focus on something. And in that sense, we understand that concerning, for example, the experience of the initiative with the test beds, we will also look at the involvement of member states, of course. And so also member states funding will possibly drive the priorities on what they see fits in their specific regions, cities, and so on and so forth, which, as we heard, might involve public transport, but also good transports. So in that sense, we see more or less preferences for some use cases to start with in the next years. And so that's where we understand the priorities might be in the very short term. But in the longer term, we need to be to have a bit broader perspective.
Christian, from CCHEM Association's perspective, where do you want to see more funding, or the focus on funding?
It's a complex question because we have to look on a 360 degrees analysis. Regarding infrastructure, I would like to point out that we have to clearly look into the current offers mobility service providers' needs that we heard previously, some of the companies and operators who are active, what is really specifically needed for CCHEM operations, and what is needed for all cars, basically, coming from the ITS directive. Good lane markings are needed for conventional cars, for conventional lane keep systems, and so on, road signage. So I would pledge for really differentiating, and this is one aspect. And as mentioned before, AI specific investments are clearly in the focus of my traditional industry. This would be a non-differentiating need of funding that can, in terms of collaboration, also be quite easily accessible. And further down, for sure, if we talk about common European foundation models, it's getting more complex, but it's absolutely worth looking into it. And this would be the focus from my point of view.
I think we have a few more minutes. I want to give the panelists a chance for some final remarks, but in terms of the measure of success, there's a bit of work that needs to be done from a policymaking and financing standpoint. But how do you know that you've struck the right balance, that you're headed in the right direction? What's that measure of success that is really important to you? And I want each of you to give your perspective.
Referring again to the test beds, because that's indeed our priority for the very short term. Here, I fully agree on what was presented also by MEP Maran as a measure for the projects we should focus on. So we aim at having several member states involved for each test bed, let's say at least 3, 4, and then to have another scale of vehicles on road. So now we heard from many presenters, many speakers, we have around a few units of vehicles involved in the projects or in the first commercial deployment. With the test beds, we should aim at higher number, at least in the order of magnitude of hundreds, as mentioned by Mr. Maran. So that would be a very good success from my perspective.
It's exciting. Jens, how about you?
Yes, I like very much the saying of Mr. Wigger from Moya, speed before perfection. This is not the European approach. Normally in Brussels, you have a 100% solution, you do nothing. Perhaps it's good to really fasten up the process. So if we have something on the type approval, just get things done. I already stated that this kind of project financing should be part of the MFF, so part of the whole framework for financing. And if it comes to the need to harmonize the testing and the deployment of rules, of course, the European Commission is able to give their framework in a way, a minimum standard, that we have a European approach on this regulation. So I think there the Commission will be in the lead and they really can deliver.
Patrice, how about you?
Yes, well, I will look a little bit beyond and I say when we will have a measure of success when actually we will be able to scale up all these operations with a high level of safety, with lower cost, operational costs, with profit-driven operations, and where perhaps actually autonomous vehicle or autonomous, the autonomous ecosystem will be also able to replace perhaps, private cars. So a change of paradigm in the mobility and with impact on sustainability and so on and so on. But okay, that's really long term. And sorry, just one thing, I forgot to highlight that from an investor standpoint, the regulatory sandbox is a very good initiative because this is exactly what investors are looking at. Some kind of reassurance that the process, the operations, the technology is actually delivering. And that's something which investors need in order to embark into this journey.
Excellent point. Christian, the final word.
Yeah, I would like to add on the initiatives on testbeds and regulatory sandboxes, where we definitely should strive for looking for new processes coming from innovation, quick innovation, bringing quick innovations to the street and have a coherent process that might end into a full homologation. This would be a strong need for Europe, that there is a clear perspective for innovators to have a accelerated and lean process towards homologation. Thank you.
Well, some lofty outcomes, some very exciting measures of success, totally achievable with the right changes in regulatory structure and different ways to test and scale this technology. Please give a round of applause for the panelists.
First, to thank you all the speakers, to thank Timothy Gibaudi and Ivan Castigliola to have moderated the panels, to my staff for all the organization that was not that easy and quite happy because I chose them, so I made a good job. And I think it has been a very interesting and helpful afternoon. Of course, it's not a beginning of nothing because many of you work in this topic from several years, but I hope we made some point that could be helpful for the next years. First, we know that the European Commission has made some tasks. They say they can have some better rules in the next month to increase the possibility of investment, to take off the limit number. We have to check it will happen, of course, and we will focus on that. We have to scale up autonomous vehicle as a priority, a political priority. Now, to be sincere, it is not, even in automotive sector. But we see the potential, not only the potential, the fact that it could be a revolution. It will not be so easy to work with my colleague Giseke because it's not easy to negotiate with you, honestly. But I think we can do that, and when EPP and S&D cooperate, there is we make a difference. While we don't cooperate, we make also only bans and something like that. So this is a land of opportunity, and I think we can maybe have a way to imagine. I presented today a document to have some point, but we can also focus and see how we can integrate with other colleagues and have a position maybe from our groups and for Parliament to give also sign to Commission that is important to do more and faster for autonomous vehicle. There is a point that many of you underlined and probably is also partially missing in my document. We need to decide some priority. If we don't have the same amount of money of USA and China, if we have the way we make rules here, etc., probably we will have to decide where we want to focus. For example, I think public transport would be a focus. It's interesting also the work on freight, robotaxi. We are ready or not to compete really. Let's talk about probably if we decide that everything is important the same, we are not we are too weak to do everything. We have to focus on some point and discuss about it. The other point is we have to concentrate resources. Few projects, a few successful projects, clear indication to the market, clear indication to our partner. I welcome the fact that even EIB participate with a very active position on that. We have to know that if three big projects, those three big projects should be the best in the best position in a competition that is worldwide. There is a lot of work to do. I know you are ready to work in the best way, and now we have to do more on the political level. So we are here for that. Thank you, and have a nice evening.